Hi, welcome to this video. So in this, I was going to do this as one really long video, but I'm going to do it as kind of, I think, a series of short videos, and I'll upload them all at the same time so you can see the whole series rather than having one massive long video. Basically, we're going to look at sampling on, sampling on the Deluge. Okay, so sampling something I used to do loads of sampling back in the 80s, or mid 80s. And I had it was a roller, I think it was something like a W40 keyboard, and it had one of the old little floppy disks that weren't actually floppy. If you're my age, you'll know what I'm talking about. Kids watching this won't have a clue what I'm talking about. But yeah, I used to sample back in those when I think you had something ridiculous like 1.4 megabytes of memory on one of those discs. So I remember if you had like a live set, you had like a massive thing of discs you had to take out with you. Yeah, so kids of today, don't moan when you've only got like a 16 gigabyte SD card because you don't know you're born on those. Anyway, sampling. So what I'm going to specifically do in this one is sample a drum loop just from a vinyl record. So something, kind of a thing I like to do is I'll just go around some charity shops and I'll just randomly buy a few records for like 50p a pound. I'll have a listen to them. And then I'll sample bits from it and mash the sounds up and use some sounds. And it's a good way of a bit of inspiration as well. If you're stuck for some inspiration, you know, just go and get some old records and see what you can get from them. This is one, cost me a couple of quid. It's like a Two Live Crew thing, but I think this dude was from Two Live Crew and it was sort of his solo album. Band in the USA it's called, from 1990. So I picked this up because I thought there's bound to be some like 808 stuff going off on here. And the drum loop I'm going to sample is the first track on the second side, which is called So Funky. So we're going to sample that drum loop off here, get it into the Deluge, and then I'll kind of show you what you can do with it and so on. So to start with, I'll zoom in on the Deluge where we're getting more in on there. Just thought I'd talk about connections first of all. So the Deluge, it's got a little microphone built in here. Obviously you're not going to get great sound quality from that. But that's good if you want to be out like field recording, that sort of thing. So for the purpose of this, we're going to the line in, okay, at the back of the Deluge there. That's this cable here. What I'm doing for now is I'm just taking this out of the headphone socket. This is my amp that goes with my turntable up here. So this is going to this amp. I'm just taking the output from the headphone socket just for ease of doing that, because I've got it connected up to the speakers and the mixer and everything else. So we've got the output from that going into here. So that could be anything. It could be something played off your smartphone, your iPad, a synth, anything. So you can sample off anything and just go straight into the Deluge. So one of the things you've got to sort of think about is how you're monitoring what you're actually recording, because you can't hear, if you're just playing in here, you will only hear what is being sampled when you actually start recording and sampling. So you've got to just think your way around that. Now, obviously, if you're going into, you know, like a mixer or something, you've got various outputs, you can split it, you can monitor it that way, and then start your recording. Let's just assume you've not got any of that fancy schmancy gear, and all we're going to do is go from like a record player or a phone straight into here. So there is a way around of monitoring it while we're recording it, and I'll show you that in a second, because I'm just going to change the camera around and we'll get it zoomed in on the Deluge. I don't think there's anything else I need to just cover while I'm on this lovely angle, looking at my lovely face. So we'll change the camera around and then we'll get stuck in and we'll get some recording going. Okay, see you in a sec.
Okay, so we've obviously just done the quick introduction video. What I'll do just in this next part is just set up the monitoring track and just do the actual recording. And then in the next part, I'll look at editing the start and end points and so on. So first thing we're going to do is set up our kind of track for monitoring the whatever it is that we are sampling. So to do that, we're going to use a synth track, and we're going to initialize that. So we're going to do Shift Synth. That's going to give us a new synth, and then the oscillator type, we're going to go Shift and press this third button up here, and we're going to choose our left-right input. Okay, so if I now play the record, just start that up. We're not going to actually hear anything until I kind of sort of open up one of the notes here. So C3 is the default one, and that will kind of play it back to me in its original form. Okay, so that is the record now playing. And if we go up, you'll hear it kind of pitch it up dependent on the note. So. So, lots of fun to be had with that as well. Okay, so obviously we can't hold a finger down there and sample at the same time. So what we need to do is just put one long note in here.
People don't know.
Okay, and then as long as the Deluge is playing,
We didn't ask you to publicize us, but it was you.
okay, we're going to hear what we are sampling. So that's kind of our monitoring track. And I'll use that actually on a live basis when I'm playing live as well sometimes. So because if I don't want to take a mixer out with me, I've got a simple setup. Usually I have like the Deluge and the TB03. I'll put the TB03 in there, set up a like monitoring track, and then it works really well for that. Okay, so let's just get the record back to the beginning. So for sampling, we're going to use a kit track. So I'm going to go onto kit, but I'm going to initialize this and have a new blank kit. And what will happen is it will load in the last sample that that you use normally, or if it's a default one, it's usually it goes on to 808 or whatever. Now, you may notice I've now got this waveform view on here. So depending on when you are actually watching this, you may or may not yet have this version. I'm just running a beta version of the new software that's due out at the end of 2018. At the moment it's middle of December 2018. It's not been fully released yet, but there are beta versions out that people can test and kind of give feedback on. The waveform view I think is really cool. The principles that I'm going to go through are the same whether you've got this version or not. So like I say, depending on when you're watching it or not, you know, don't think, well, where's that come from? Because you will get it eventually on the free update. So we don't need to do anything with that now. We're kind of ready to go and record on this. So I'm just going to get the record back to the beginning of the track. Okay, and I'm going to just record it right from the beginning. And then we'll chop out the bits that we don't need. And I'll just let it play through a couple of bars just so I've got a decent amount that I want to use. Okay. So first thing is, make sure this is playing so we're hearing it. There's the needle going on the record. I'm just going to record it from now. And I'll just press record again when we're ready to stop. So I'll turn the record off. Turn that off. Now we don't need to kind of hear any of that again, so I'm just going to turn that track off just to be sure. So our recording is now going to be on this track here. So if I press the audition pad down here, okay, you can see we've got that now recorded into the Deluge. Okay, so that's the recording part of it, which is the simple-ish sort of part. Editing part can be when it gets a little bit more not a little bit more in depth, just a little bit fiddly, just getting your start and end points right. But the new waveform view does help a lot with that. So I'm going to cover that in the next video. So thanks for watching this one. And like I say, if you want to look at the editing bit, then that's in that will be part 2. And I'm going to upload all these at the same time, so you should be able to go straight into part 2 now. Okay, I'll see you in part 2.